Charles Davis does a great job, NFL Network Analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at CFD22. You can also see him throughout the week on NFL Network's Path to the Draft at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Kind enough to join me on a Wednesday. Charles, how you been, pal?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Appreciate a couple moments. Let me ask you this right at the top here. It seems when we look at some of these quarterbacks that are coming out, the main guys, the Allens, the Rosens, the Jacksons, the Darnold, the Mayfields, I get this sense from all the guys that are coming on my show and the guys that I'm talking to, they think out of those five, you're going to get one or two that might turn out to be a Jake Locklear or a Ponder, maybe a guy that turns out to be a Ryan or a Stafford, and then a guy that's maybe a franchise quarterback, and then you're going to get that bust. My point is, I can't figure it out. I just can't. I don't have a sense of these guys.
Yeah, and that's not unusual, and when I say it that way, because we don't often have as many as we're talking about near the top, right? Usually we're, 2 quarterbacks?
That's it, yeah.
And we're talking about trying to break that out. But even amongst them, what's really the consensus? Let's go back to Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Right now, if you went back and rallied everyone who was around during that time, okay, who did you have at the top of your board? Everybody'd say Manning. Duh, right? Because we've seen what has happened. The truth of the matter is, at least half the league, and I believe more than half the league, has Ryan Leaf rated ahead of Peyton Manning. So you never really are sure. You have conviction about it. You think you're going to be right. If we all knew Russell Wilson never would have been a third-round pick, Brady's the most famous one, being a sixth.
Sure, absolutely, guy.
Yeah. And then that's where I always laugh when you always hear about, well, New England, they sure know what they're doing. Well, if they really knew what they were doing, you really think he would have lasted to the sixth
That's
round?
right. That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
It's Monday morning quarterbacking at its best. Is after the fact.
It certainly is. But how you break it out, I think, Rich, is going to be based team to team. How they see these kids, how they see them fitting into their system, how it works with their offensive staff, head coach philosophy, what the defense is, it surrounds them. You get the whole idea. Do they have a running game that'll help them improve quicker, so the quarterback doesn't get beat up by throwing it 40 times? All these things will go into the mix for each team, and I wish we could get inside all 32 draft rooms and see what their board says.
Oh, absolutely.
I think you see a real assortment of where these guys are ranked with each team.
Well, I think when you look at the 2 New York teams, first of all, the Jets don't make that trade if they don't believe they're taking a quarterback at 3. I mean, just book it. It's a done deal. Now, whether it's Darnold or Rosen or whomever, it gets a little dicey to me is if you're Cleveland, because you think now you make the move for Taylor, you think, okay, let me add a great running back out of Penn State and Barkley, or do I go after a Sam Darnold where it could be the perfect fit and I have a franchise quarterback in case a veteran doesn't pan out. And then you have the Giants sitting at 2. The more I think about it with the Giants, if the Browns go with a quarterback at 1, the Giants, you have to turn around and get Barkley because you don't make the moves that you make in the offseason and also turn around and sign a Nate Soldier if you don't believe you can solidify that line, extend Eli Manning's career. After that, with the Jets at 3, the Browns again at 4, it's your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, it is. And let's even go back to the Giants if we want to play this game a little bit more, because I think that we can, and it's not just absolute fodder for us to discuss, okay? I think this is a legit conversation. You go back to the Giants at 2, all right? You've made the move that you've decided Eli Manning can play longer, right? As you mentioned, you make the move for Solder at left tackle.
Yep.
But Justin Pugh just exited, correct?
Correct.
Who was probably their best offensive lineman. Now he is gone. You've got to make sure Eli Manning stays upright, don't you?
Yeah.
So
you go Nelson. Nelson. Yeah.
I'm not saying that you do. I'm saying that is part of your conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that you've got to think to yourself, okay, which way do we go? Nelson now comes into the conversation, and that's a big discussion. But here's the other one: it's the telephone, and what I mean by that is, hello, Buffalo.
Yeah, I mentioned that too.
Make the phone call
because they have so many draft picks.
See what they want exactly, and see if Buffalo has conviction of someone they want to go up and get. And then if you're the Giants, you take that that plethora of choices. You drop down to Buffalo at whatever number they are, and guess what you do? You pick up good football players. So there are a number of ways the Giants can go. I'm not sure they can go wrong if they pick Barkley or Nelson. but I think the people's choice would be Barkley.
I mean, listen, I watch this kid in college, but you guys get an up close look at this kid. How is he that quote unquote transcendent player, Barkley?
I think that he has that possibility of being, yes, and that's why I'm sitting there looking at the Browns at 1. And I know it seems outlandish, and God, Rich, how long ago? It wasn't that long ago we were saying no one should ever draft a running back in the top 10.
You can throw me in.
Right?
Listen, I still got on Jerry Jones for the LA, but listen, it proved me wrong. Because I always believed. Listen, you know more than I do. I just believe you can always pick these. You played the game, but you can pick these guys maybe in the second or third round, right? I think.
Yeah.
You know,
and
but
you've seen, and it's come. Look, Rich, it's come to fruition many times. Kareem Hunt led the league in rushing last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a third-round pick.
Yep, great point.
Okay, your philosophy is not wrong, but I think in recent years what we've seen is those with conviction about players to go get a runner in the top 10 have actually been proven correct. Todd Gurley was the first to me. He kind of led that deal where, remember, big discussion coming off the knee injury.
Yep.
Do you go get a runner that high? I think the Rams got him at 10, didn't they? Somewhere in that neighborhood.
He was a top 10 draft pick, I remember.
He was a top 10 draft pick. Well, that has turned out pretty solid for the Rams. Okay, especially once they jettisoned Jeff Fisher and that offensive staff, and now got a legit one in there, and now you're seeing what he can really do, and he blew up last year. And don't forget his rookie year, he's over 1,000 yards. So that's worked out well. Ezekiel Elliott, taking him at 4. Remember the controversy over that? That was a huge firestorm. Well, it transformed that team and got them back to being a heck of a football team that first season. So, yeah, if you have conviction about a guy, Barkley's that guy. I mean, he's going to be that one. And think of it this way if you're Cleveland. In your history, when you have been really good, you've had that type of a guy.
Of course.
Jim Brown, Leroy Kelly, Kevin Mack, Ernest
Biner. Yep.
Right? If you have that guy, it takes a lot of pressure off of whoever's playing quarterback for you. And by the way, you're still sitting there at 4. And there's more than an even chance that you get one of the 2 quarterbacks that you probably have at the top of your draft.
Listen, I hate to say it, even the Browns can't mess it up this year. They just can't.
One would think not, considering that 1 and 4, you should be able to get two of the top, players in the draft. You should be. Look, even if they didn't get a quarterback, which everybody would absolutely be stunned. Think of it this way: what if you draft Saquon Barkley and Bradley Chubb?
I was just thinking Chubb too. Yeah.
Right? You take Chubb and pair him with Myles Garrett on the opposite side of Greg Williams' aggressive defense. Tyrod Taylor is your bridge quarterback. You know that. And by the way, we'll be talking about quarterbacks again next year. The Browns fans, unfortunately, you can't sell that, Rich. You and I both know John Dorsey is much of a guy that he will go outside the box with his picks. And look at Kansas City. Remember, he took Eric Fisher at the top of the draft instead of Luke Jokel. Remember, he took Marcus Peters with all the red flags around him. That worked out pretty well until Marcus, really more of the emotional stuff than the actual play was the issue. And Charles, to your point, he has done that, and now you're sitting there with this.
Yeah, and to your point,
out of the box again.
Yeah, and to your point too, he also they want a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over. So again,
and Tyrod Taylor does not do that.
Yep. I'm curious.
So that's part of it, but I just don't think you can sell it to the Browns fans, Rich. I just don't think that you can go there draft day, have 2 picks in the top 4. And neither one of them be a quarterback.
No, you can't. I mean, they'll tear up the city.
I don't think you can.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Eagles and what they're doing coming off a Super Bowl win. I mean, listen, Howie Roseman, all of a sudden, I make the joke sometimes on the air. Yep. After the Kelly thing, they put him back in the big boy seat. He's allowed to sit with the adults, and he's crunching the numbers. All the moves they made last year, there's a reason they gave those contracts to those said players, and they all came out and they all contributed in that run. Now look what he's doing in some of the moves that they're making, and then they're just adding to that defense as well. What's your take on the Eagles?
Well, I love what they're doing, obviously. I love what they were doing before. Howie Roseman is almost like the Mark Twain quote about, when you left home when you were 14 thinking your dad was an idiot, and you came back at 21, amazing how much smarter he got in 7 years. It wasn't Howie wasn't smart before.
Now he's a genius.
Now he's a genius, right? So it all worked out pretty well for him. It's also having a Super Bowl trophy also allows you to make bolder moves at times too.
Agree.
And to me, Michael Bennett's a bolder move. A little bit older, pass rushing skills, played through a lot of injuries last year, also is a guy known to be in the newspapers and on the media talking about things that might not concern football, which some organizations don't want to have at all. The Eagles have handled that quite well. That is not an issue for them. Okay, everybody talks about, well, if you're going to have distractions, those teams don't win. They just want a Super Bowl with a bunch of guys who are concerned about their world and their environment, not just the football field. So that's a non-issue for them. And here you have Bennett, which you're counting on the rest of the locker room to take care of all that. Chris Long, you don't have any, right?
Nope,
you got Fletcher Cox sitting there. You've got Brandon Graham. You've got a locker room that takes care of a lot of those things. And maybe Michael Bennett doesn't have to be out because in Seattle, that locker room, they all fed off of each other, didn't they, Rich?
They did.
When one guy
a lot of
served,
personalities too,
served.
Charles. Yep, a lot of personalities.
A ton of them. In Philadelphia, it might be a little bit different, and if you get the best out of Michael Bennett, that's a really big deal. Listen, you get Jordan Hicks back at linebacker. So when I'm looking at the Eagles, there's all this discussion about where do you go, what do you fill in, what do you do? They could go a number of places. Tight end now all of a sudden becomes a consideration because you want a second guy behind Zach Ertz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, secondary, do you continue to look there? You try to look maybe the safety position because Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod, they're starting to, move up there a little bit, even though they're playing quite well. Do you look there? Do you want to add to your corners? Because you can never have enough guys who can cover, but you're counting on Sidney Jones to come back. Howie Roseman has a lot of directions he can go, and none of them are wrong.
Last one before I let you get out of here. We'll stick with the NFC East. Kirk Cousins finally gets his wish. He's out of Washington. He goes to Minnesota. Washington makes the move for Alex Smith. Just, if you can, kind of encapsulate that. It just seemed like, listen, I know you called a lot of the Skins games as well. I always got the sense Kirk Cousins was underappreciated. I don't know. Is it a wash to you, Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins?
I think that in so many ways they are similar people. The only reason I'm not going to say it's a wash is because for Kirk, the last few years, he was getting the signal that the organization wasn't all in on him, right? Because they were always tagging him.
Yep.
The organization, on the flip side, was saying, well, if you really want this contract, are you all in with us? And last year they knew that he was like, well, if I play really well, I can go somewhere else. I don't think either side was wrong, but neither side got to they didn't meet in the middle to make it all work. So it was time for him to go. And if that's the case, let him go. Let him go do his thing. But here's the thing for him now. He was trying to make Washington good. He's supposed to make Minnesota great.
Yep.
And that's a whole different ball game than it is just trying to make the playoffs. And if you're Kirk Cousins, right? Think about that. If you're Kirk Cousins, if you're Sam Bradford, neither's been to the Pro Bowl, right? Or let me rephrase that. Neither's won a playoff game.
Yeah.
Right?
Taking a snap.
Neither has a winning record as a starting quarterback for the last 4 or 5 years. And these guys are making more money than anyone.
I know.
Bradford got $20 million for 1 year in Arizona.
Unbelievable.
Does that tell you about quarterback? And Rich, whatever you do, go out back now and start warming up your arm, okay? Because you might get a tryout.
That day has passed, my friend. Hey, Charles Davis, NFL Network Analyst. Follow him on Twitter at CFD22. And also does a great job calling the games as well. You can catch him this week on NFL Network's Path to the Draft at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Charles, great stuff, pal. Hopefully we can get you back on again in future. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rich. You take care of yourself, okay?
You got it. Be well. Charles Davis, good stuff with him.